Part 15. Infinite Doomsday Start Draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 141. As a result, the ice spear missed the target as expected. Google search reading. And she soon discovered that what the opponent shot this time was completely different from the previous one. It was completely harmless except for the emission of some smoke. In fact, she took the initiative to give up the tactical advantage she had worked so hard to gain before. That is, the extra reaction time at the beginning. But even so, her attack was not completely ineffective. Although the ice spear just now did not hit Ruger directly, it only stabbed the ground not far from him. But the ice magic contained in the spear still exploded successfully. Although most of the strong ice magic energy missed, some of it still hit Ruger and almost froze him. However, although the smoke did not cause direct harm to Anya, it covered Ruger tightly. Therefore, Anya did not know how much impact her previous attack had on him. But it doesn't matter, just add a few more and it will be fine. Thinking of this, the witch raised the staff in her hand high and soon condensed 3 ice balls again. The strong frost magic was even more terrifying than the one on the ice spear before. If raindrops fell at this time, they would probably be transformed into ice beads or even hail by the frozen ice breath before they really touched the ice magic ball itself. 3 such strong magic balls would probably be enough to freeze everything in the entire smoke, including Lugger inside. And Lugger's current situation is really not good. If he could face the witch Anya's ice spear head-on, he could use the explosive incendiary bomb to knock it out in the air. Unfortunately, she used flash to attack him from behind. Although he used smoke bombs to save more than half a second, so that this ice spear did not hit him directly, he was still stiffened by the ice aftermath of the explosion. He is now in the fragment area of the Dark World, and electronic equipment is easily damaged by magic radiation. So the self-made Iron Man armor he is wearing now is a version without various electronic equipment. Overall, the impact is not that big, it's just that there are no various automatic devices. For example, life support equipment that automatically injects him with treatment needles when it detects a decrease in vital signs. For example, air conditioning devices that automatically turn on when high or low temperatures are detected, etc. Forget about all the above. The power equipment is fine. Although the lack of an automatic adjustment system will seriously reduce the utilization rate of the power equipment, it can at least be used. So, although this ice spear did not penetrate the defense of the energy material armor and freeze him, the extremely low temperature still made him feel extremely uncomfortable inside. So, in order to hedge, he simply took out a Molotov cocktail that had not been used for a long time and threw it hard at the ground beside him. After a while, orange-yellow flames rose in the thick black smoke. These flames, which had just reached 1000 degrees, could not burn through his armor, but could greatly alleviate the freezing effect of the ice magic. But in the eyes of the Frost Witch, this orange-red flame was not only a provocation to her, but also an excellent target for her. Buzz buzz buzz. 3 ice balls went straight to the fire in the smoke. After throwing 3 ice balls, the witch immediately flashed to the other side to prevent Ruger from using the trajectory of the ice balls to infer her position and then use the Lost One's weapon to deal with her. In this way, she could wait for Ruger to be frozen and then make up for the next round of attacks. Ruger in the smoke really fired new Lost One's weapons. However, what Anya didn't expect was that those were not high-speed shells or bombs with a wide explosion range. The guy still fired those smoke bombs that only emit smoke. That's right, Ruger fired another round of smoke bombs. After he used incendiary bombs to solve the problem of being frozen, he immediately wanted to fire smoke bombs around again. Moreover, he also spread out smoke and fled from the spot. In this way, he set up a new smoke screen while hiding in it, and soon he covered the entire guillotine in smoke. The speed of this series of actions depends on the speed of the smoke screen, so it is naturally not fast. But even so, he still dodged the 3 ice balls aimed at the initial aperture. Because in fact, when Anya threw them out, Ruger had actually left there. In addition, while Ruger was walking through the new smoke, he did not forget to continue to add Molotov cocktails under the smoke. Soon, the guillotine covered by the smoke was ignited with orange flames. This guy, is he a fire mage? He actually covered the entire arena with a wall of fire. Although the onlookers could not see what was happening in the smoke, they could see the orange flames to some extent. And an ice mage would never use a range magic like the fire wall. The one who set the fire could only be the Lost One human with the Lost One's weapons. Seeing that he was so shameless, the paladins wanted to complain, but unfortunately they could not do it at all. Because even their own witches who specialized in fire would use this trick of covering the entire arena with a wall of fire when fighting in the arena, leaving the opponent with nowhere to go. It's not that they don't want to have double standards. They find all kinds of reasons to explain that if they do the same thing, it is righteous, but if others do it, it is evil. It's just because they don't have absolute control over public opinion yet. Sister Akara, the highest leader of Rogue Town, who was on the high platform in the central area, has left, but her personal adjutant is still observing this side. The paladins dare not blatantly call a black cat a white cat for the time being. Besides, a mere 1000-degree orange flame can't cause any decent damage to most Nephilim, and they believe that the witch has a way to deal with it. The damage of this large-scale firewall spell is never too great, at most it makes the magic profession in it unable to concentrate and use some high-level magic. Of course, for the low-level ice witch, this environment should have the greatest impact on her. Where the flame is active, frost is difficult to approach. It is obviously quite unfriendly to the caster to condense frost magic from the flame environment. The witch Anya, who grew up with Tia, not only did not cultivate any feelings, but became like a mortal enemy, just because little Tia loved to set fires since she was a child. Now it is discovered that this lost one who has an ambiguous relationship with Xiao Tia is also setting fires everywhere. The frost witch's cold face is even colder than her magic. The magic attributes in Western magic are generally earth, fire, water, and wind. Among them, earth and wind are relative to water and fire, and they are mutually restraining, rather than the 5 elements of mutual generation and restraint like in the East. Simply put, the fire system can restrain the ice system, and the ice system can also restrain the fire system in turn. Feeling that there are fewer and fewer places around her that are not set on fire, the witch simply chose another magic to deal with it. Frost Nova. A range-type frost magic. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 142. When this kind of magic is released, a ring-shaped energy wave condensed with frost magic will be rapidly radiated outward with the caster as the center, just like a supernova explosion. Therefore it is called nova magic. This kind of range magic does not do high enough damage to a single target, but it is more than enough to extinguish fires. Even the water vapor contained in the frost magic further reduces the duration of the smoke screen. It's just that the energy impact ring when the magic surges is like a target, marking the location of the witch to lugger. So, naturally, just like what happened a few seconds ago, Lugger also used this as a target to aim at the witch. Boom! Tens of seconds after the battle started, Lugger finally got the opportunity to directly attack the opponent for the first time. Stab stab! Several armors made of frost appeared out of thin air in front of Anya, and then shattered into ice crystals. This is the phenomenon of neutralizing enemy attacks. Although the frost armor was shattered, the 30mm cannon shot fired by Ruger was still barely blocked. Anya was shocked and angry when she saw this, and subconsciously threw a frost arrow to fight back. This thing is instantaneous and cannot condense as much demonic energy as the ice spear, but at least it is fast enough to successfully attach an ice crystal to the Lugger armor. There was a chill in his chest. Lugger was naturally not polite and fired back again. For a moment, the two of them were shooting at each other, fighting back and forth in the smoke of the flames, having a great time. Hey, you just said you wanted to avenge that bald Daniel, right? Ruger didn't seem to care much about the fact that she had a tie with a little wizard, and instead talked to her teasingly. Why, do you have a good relationship with that scary-looking uncle? Don't tell me that he is your boyfriend or your husband. Your taste shouldn't be that bad. The witch Anya had suffered a verbal defeat from this man before, so she had made up her mind not to have too much verbal entanglement with him this time. But she didn't expect that he could actually say such words, so the witch had to retort, "What nonsense are you talking about?" Even though she knew she was in a thick fog and couldn't see outside, and she couldn't see herself outside, she still subconsciously looked in the direction of Paladin Austin. It seemed that he wanted to explain to him that the words of this lost human being were not true, so he should not believe them. Ordinarily the thick fog obscured everyone's sight, but when she turned to look at Austin, the human in the thick fog seemed to have seen her actions and said, "What, you want to see if that Austin misunderstood you? Afraid that he really thinks that you and Bald Daniel have some relationship beyond colleagues? You. Anya was ashamed and angry when she was told the central issue. She raised her hand and shot out a string of ice arrows. Dang, 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 someone couldn't dodge, and the armor immediately took a few hard hits. Although those magic powers could not break the defense of his armor, a considerable part of the energy contained in it still acted on him through the armor, making him feel uncomfortable for a while. Ouch, ouch. But he still kept talking, "Don't be so strong in your reaction. If you become angry, doesn't it mean you admit it?" Lugger still had no intention of letting her go. "Oh, you guys always keep an eye on tall, handsome, and rich people. Don't even look at it? How is the beautiful woman behind her worse than you?" Lugger didn't care that the witch in the smoke screen couldn't see him at all. He pointed at the assassin-type Amazon female warrior named Natasha behind Austin, and drew her curves in the air that would make most women jealous. "Is his appearance lower than yours, or his figure worse than yours? Look at how the two of you get along. They've probably been together day and night for a long time. How can there be any room for you to get involved again? There is a saying that the person who understands you best is often your enemy. There is also a saying that the beholder is clear." As a bystander to the enemy, although Lugger only glanced at it twice, he also saw the triangular relationship that was not complicated. Speaking of which, who can't see how close the paladin Captain Austin is to his Amazon female warrior bodyguard? A little girl like Anya, with her natural affection for tall, rich, and handsome people, always thinks that she will have a chance if she works harder. Of course, if it had been anyone else, Lugger wouldn't have seen it so clearly. Most importantly, the witch Anya has a face that is very similar to his ex-girlfriend in her own world. The hands were also separated, things had changed, and when Lugger came back from his dream at midnight, he also thought about every bit of the past. Now think about it carefully. The weird question of the ex-girlfriend Shirugia on the night of the breakup was just to find a reason to break up. Who told you not to wear a hat? Who told you to wear a hat? Teacher, you said, that means I'm holding back my desire to hit you, and I can't hide from you no matter what. As for the reason, Lugger had somewhat guessed it. After all, that guy would always mention a certain senior in the unit who took good care of him no matter what happened. Although he had not met that person directly, seeing the way Anya looked at Austin in the current world, the disembodied figure in Lugger's mind quickly overlapped with this Austin. The truth may be that simple. This is just his conjecture, and this question may never have an answer, but to Ruger, these are no longer important. After all, perhaps even he himself was not so wholeheartedly devoted to this relationship. It might be a good thing to separate early. What's more, he has met the person who will make him devote himself. It is precisely because he has truly let go that he can use this method to reverse Anya, and then find the joints and use them on the battlefield. It seems a bit despicable, but in fact, he has the idea of curing diseases and saving people in his heart. Shut up. Compared with Ruger, who has seen through it, this Anya obviously wants to continue living in a dream. I don't need you to meddle in my business. Besides, according to the new law of Rocktown, an excellent Nephilim like Lord Austin can have more than one wife. It's hopeless. This little girl is hopeless. Ruger is not completely unable to understand her. There is an old saying in China itself, it is better to be a concubine of a hero than a wife of a mediocre person. The person who left this sentence probably understands the little girl's feelings for her Captain Austin. However, Ruger did not quite understand. This Anya was not one of those weak women in the feudal era who could not control their own destiny. For those women who could only be vassals of others, of course, being one of the multiple vassals of a powerful person was much better than being a single vassal of a weak person. But the witch was different. Not only was she a Nephilim who could control her own destiny in the Doomsday world, but according to Tia and Minerva, she was also a quasi-genius with great potential. In other words, this witch Anya was the kind of person who could potentially become a leader. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-Chi-Ji. Chapter 143. For a person with such potential, his lifelong pursuit is to be another person's concubine. This is simply unreasonable in Ruger's opinion. Even if she is a woman, this matter is definitely beyond the bottom line of Luger's tolerance. Of course, this woman just looks like his ex-girlfriend and actually has nothing to do with him. It doesn't really matter whether he tolerates it or not. However, because of this, he was able to let go more freely. When they met for the first time, because of this person's appearance, he had more or less a different fantasy deep down in his heart. I wonder if I can use her to replace someone's death, to prove myself, or to exchange for some spiritual comfort. Just like those people who always like to find their current girlfriend who has many similarities with their ex after a breakup. Of course, as his relationship with Taya warmed up day by day, this idea had long been thrown into the corner. Only the last bit of haziness remains. Now, this last bit of haziness has disappeared. It's not because this little girl has a certain heart, but because he can't agree with this little girl's thoughts from the bottom of his heart. Even, there is still a bit of hatred that iron cannot become steel. Think about Tia in your own family, even Minerva or Blue Draven Sarah, among the three female Nephilims, which one is not a brave fighter deep down? Their pursuit in life, whether it is to bring hope to mankind, pursue glory on the battlefield, or become a leader to protect one's side, is a proper protagonist mentality. They don't pursue anything other than being concubines for others. Even if Ruger's feelings for them are different, whether they are close or distant, his respect for them is genuine at this point. As for the witch in front of him, he really didn't have any good feelings for her now. Just looking at that face, this is so strange, he felt some sympathy for her. Well, the instinctive sympathy you feel when you see someone born with intellectual disabilities. For this reason, Luge thought about it and said, I don't know what you guys want to do here, but as you said, he can have more than one wife, so that doesn't mean he can only have two, right? With his status, can he have 3, 4, 5, or even more? Then, what will you be by then? His teammates? His nth wife? Or his loyal dog cannon fodder? Shut up. Master Austin, you are definitely not that kind of person, the witch shouted. Yeah. Didn't you hear how he greeted Artia just now? Open your mouth, sister, and shut up, brother. Brother Pig's appearance is beyond words, okay. He clearly has some evil thoughts about our family, Taya. But how he behaved after that, How he turned his back and refused to recognize anyone else. Didn't you feel scared? Aren't you afraid of being used by him too? Oh, you should want to be used by him before it's too late, because then you'll feel like you're valuable to him. But have you ever thought about what he will do to you when you are no longer useful? Should I continue to maintain a distant relationship with you, or should I simply abandon you and pretend you never existed? Shut up. What do you know? You are just an ordinary person with no glory at all, the witch said angrily. And that Tia is obviously a dirty mixed blood, and her awakening is not complete. How can she win the favor of Lord Austen? Why doesn't she just get married and have children like other ordinary women? Why does she always go against me? How am I inferior to her? Not to mention that Tia outside the smoke was very confused after hearing her words. Even Luodu was very angry after hearing this. You guy, let me tell you how you are not as good as her. Lugger suppressed his anger and said. Because for guys like you, Holy Knight Captain, a wife is worse than a concubine is worse than a steal, and a steal is worse than being unable to steal. How are you inferior to Tia? Because you don't need to steal, you just want to sell yourself in a hurry. How can you be compared to Tia who never looks him in the eyes? What? What the hell? Lugger's words sounded baffling to everyone at first. However, when they calmed down and took a closer look, everyone found that although the statement was vulgar, the logic behind it was quite true. Who doesn't love the most? Just because you can't ask for it, you want it even more. For a moment, everyone was also aroused, and they wondered if they were thinking about people or things they couldn't dream of. When Ruger said this, his words were less offensive than offensive. Most of them were meant to exhort or even guide the little girl to take the right path. The meaning behind it even has this flavor: if you want to win the favor of Mr. Austen, you little girl can't always be in favor of him. It's a pity that for a little girl who is deeply in love, she won't listen to a word of this kind of words. At least not now. Not only would she not listen, she would also get angry at the persuader and even hold a grudge, thinking that the persuader had shattered her dreams and hopes. All her sufferings were entirely the fault of her counselor. You bastard, I'll fight you. The little girl was really anxious now. She ignored the thick smoke and flames around her and concentrated all her strength on the spot to gather the frost demonic energy. The demonic energy was so strong that even Ruger, who was dozens of meters away, felt the cold wind blowing past him. Even the smoke was about to be blown away by the cold wind. No, be careful, Ruger. Don't let her release that magic. As a former mage killer, Tia was very sensitive to the magic fluctuations that were infinitely close to being out of control, and she immediately exclaimed. With her ability, she can't control this forbidden spell level magic at all. If you are not careful, half of Rogue Town may be blown up by her. What? Half of Rogue Town will be blown up? When Tia said this, the crowd around panicked immediately and ran away in the opposite direction of the arena. If it weren't for the Neophyte Yen who had maintained order before, I'm afraid that dozens or hundreds of people would have been trampled to death. However, in the face of this situation, although the paladins on the other side looked bad, they still didn't say anything to stop it. Looking at the look of Austen, I'm afraid Ruger really got it right. Even if it would destroy the town of Roge, he would rather let Anya kill Ruger and even Tia in this way. He really regarded Anya as a prop that could be used, a consumable. Anya felt that she seemed unable to control the magic power in her hand. The smoke around her was blown away by her magic power. She turned her head to look at Austen, hoping to get some comfort. She even imagined that maybe Austen would come to help her when he saw her like this. However, what was waiting for her was a cold and even disgusted look. Those eyes seemed to say to her, "You messed up, you have messed up a lot of things. Now, I will give you one last chance and allow you to fight for it again. This time, don't let me down again." Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 144. I love someone with all my heart and want to please him all the time. However, in the end, he can let you die without caring, and let you use your death to exchange for his interests. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Under normal circumstances, most people who encounter such things should wake up and stop at the brink, and cut off ties with this person from then on. But for some people, she will only try harder to please that person. Perhaps, it is because she has fallen too deep. Perhaps, apart from this, she can no longer find the value of her existence. Or perhaps, it is just because of inertia. Unfortunately, there are not a few such people, especially young people who lack care during their growth, who are most likely to fall into this chaotic emotional vortex. Even more unfortunately, the witch Anya is such a person. Although her mother was a disciple of Akara, a senior nun of the Blind Sisters, she was adopted by her mother's junior sister when she was very young because the couple died early. This doesn't seem to be a big problem. After all, there are too many orphans in the end times, and only a few have healthy parents. Think about Tia, Minerva, and even Sarah. Among the Nephilims that Ruger has come into contact with, not to mention that none of them have healthy parents, there is not even one with any direct blood relatives. They are not as lacking in love as Anya. But the problem is that the elders who raised these three people all cared for them. Especially Tia's master Katala, who never married and had children in his life, and only adopted Tia. They are not mother and daughter, but better than mother and daughter. Before his death, he had given Tia the most important legacy of the family, the space backpack. Growing up in such a caring way, although she was born in the end times, Tia's personality is still healthy and sunny. On the other hand, although Anya was adopted by the last disciple of the senior nun Akara, and was even nominally the last disciple of this last disciple had a secret. She liked Anya's biological father, and the degree of his love was even as much as Anya liked Austin. When facing the children of the person you like and the rival in love, whether you love the whole family more or hate the whole family more, this is a difficult question to generalize. Some people are gentle and kind to others, but they can't stand the betrayal of the person they love. Some people are cruel and vicious and kill countless people, but they only keep the last and strongest sincerity for the person they love, and even transfer this love to her child with others. Even if this child is born by the woman who is his wife and her lover. Unfortunately, Anya's master is not the latter. According to the trivial things that Minerva helped Ruger find out, Anya's master would not beat or scold her for no reason when she was a child, but he was very strict with her. At that time, the neighbor's child made the house a mess every day, which was horrible. He even burned the house several times. But every time the child was punished, he could eat a full meal and sleep comfortably in the arms of the person who adopted her. But Anya, even if she perfectly completed most of the training plans formulated by the master, as long as there was even a little mistake, she would be punished to practice more. Not to mention dinner, even the night sleep would be cancelled. When Minerva said this, Ruger thought about Anya's thin and slender body, and then thought about a certain girl's strong muscles and perfect fat distribution, and there was only one sentence in his heart. "Thank you, Lord Katala." Well, to be honest, after listening to these past events, Ruger also understood a lot about why Anya disliked Tia since she was a child. This is not a dispute between water and fire attributes, this is simply a dispute between cold and hot life. For Anya, Tia is simply the legendary child of other people's families. Moreover, it was not the kind of other people's children that parents used to spur them on. It was the kind of other people's children that he saw with his own eyes, who were enjoying the happiness of life not far away from him while he was suffering from the pain of life. Just like the real life in the eyes of otakus. It was just that the degree was increased by who knows how many times. It was precisely because he knew these things that Ruger did not look for an opportunity to kill directly like he did with Bald Daniel, but instead had a verbal battle with Anya after the battle was deadlocked. It was a pity that he did not expect the witch to be so deeply involved. After seeing Austin's ultimatum-like eyes, the witch Anya looked even more determined. At that moment, she seemed to have determined that her life had no other meaning except to die to make her will clear. Even though she felt that the magic power condensed in her hand had far exceeded the limit she could control, she continued to condense it, and even the speed increased again. Now, the biting cold wind on the guillotine also developed rapidly towards the direction of a storm. The so-called storm is the kind of wind that blows southeast one moment and northwest the next, a completely disordered turbulent flow. Brother Lou, knowing that the witch was in a state of explosion at any time, Tia exclaimed again, signaling Ruger to make a decision quickly. Ruger knew that time was running out, but he was unwilling to watch her die, so he took out a few unused pepper tear gas bombs and threw them towards the witch. The evaporation speed of this thing is not fast. If you wait for it to explode and spread on the ground before affecting the witch, there will be no time. But he can throw these directly into the witch's face and detonate them remotely using telekinesis. The power of pepper tear gas can at least make the witch sneeze a few times. After that, the magic power in her hand may dissipate, or it may explode directly. But this is the method Lugger thinks is most likely to save her. Then, as soon as the pepper tear gas bombs flew about 1 meter in front of the witch, they were bounced away as if they hit something like a protective shield. The speed at which they were bounced was even several times faster than the speed at which Lugger had thrown them before. What's going on? Protective shield. Lugger was startled by this situation. Didn't he think that her protective ice shield had been shattered? Why is there still a shield? Moreover, this passport doesn't seem to be a variant of ice-sealed armor magic, right? No. Brother Lu, she also practices lightning magic. Upon hearing Lu Ji's doubts, Tia immediately reminded. She used lightning magic, teleportation before. It was a level 4 magic, equivalent to an advanced skill. If she wants to learn this advanced skill, she must first learn the basic prerequisite skills. The primary pre-skill for teleportation is to move objects over long distances. Moving objects over long distances? Lugger understood immediately. He also knows this skill, which is a sub-skill under his telekinesis skill tree. He just wanted to remotely control the explosion of pepper tear gas grenades, and this was the skill he needed to use. But what he moved remotely was the firing pin outside the primer of the tear gas canister. Similar to the process of firing a bullet in the barrel of a gun, the ignition firing of various hand grenades often uses the process of hitting the primer with the firing pin to ignite the propellant. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi Ji. Chapter 145. The fuse is a device that uses various methods to allow the firing pin to hit the primer under specific circumstances. So when he threw several tear gas canisters, he only turned on the safety and did not activate the fuse, because he could remotely control them to explode directly. It's just that he really forgot that in the Nephilim power system in the Dark World, this long-range object-moving skill is classified as a mage's lightning magic. Obviously, the essence of the assassin's shadow training is also telekinesis. But after thinking about it, Lugger understood again. After all, assassins, as mage killers, are themselves a branch separated from ancient mages. It is normal that the power systems of assassins and mages overlap, and even the source of their power is the same. However, the rampaging witch Anya actually used the long-distance object-moving skill to create a defensive force field for herself, which made Lugger scratch her head. After all, the non-lethal ammunition he commonly used to interrupt his spellcasting would basically be unusable. He even doubted whether that guy's defensive force field would be able to deflect his own 30mm armor-piercing projectiles. Although, he doesn't intend to directly try lethal weapons. After listening to Minerva talk about Anya's tragic childhood, he had some sympathy for this guy. What's more, When he discovered that Austin opposite didn't care about the witch's life or death at all, he immediately made up his mind to let her survive as long as there was a chance. This may be an instinctive sympathy for those who have been deceived and played. But more than that, he didn't want his real enemy to get what he wanted. In a sentence, the enemy wants her to die, but he wants her to live. But what should I do if the existing weapons fail to achieve the effect? It doesn't matter. Lugger growled secretly. I have a lot of money now, but I don't believe that there is no useful item in the bunker store. Against the increasingly frenzied cold storm outside, Lugger opened the store section as quickly as possible in his life and used the keyword filtering function for the first time. Non-lethal, controlled, ranged, quick. Wait. But as his adventures increased and he mastered more and more techniques and raw materials, the types of items sold in the bunker shop also increased exponentially. Even after keyword screening, there are still hundreds of pages of products that meet the criteria. In the end, Ruger even used the speed reading skills he had in school and browsed through hundreds of lines at a glance. Just when Tia shouted to remind him for the third time, and even started running towards the guillotine to take him away by force, he finally found something available. Is this okay? G quickly looked at the descriptions of these things. Although Luge had doubts, he still instinctively redeemed them. Without putting it into the launcher, he just removed the warhead and propellant part, held the warhead towards the witch, and activated the firing pin. Buzz. With an explosion far smaller than the grenades he usually used, a blazing white light flashed from his hand. The intensity of the light even gave people the feeling of a dozen suns superimposed on top of each other. This is a bright blinding bomb, a special weapon fired from a long-range large-caliber artillery to destroy the enemy's optical sighting system. The principle is similar to the flash bombs used by individual soldiers. They rely on the principle that aluminum or magnesium emits strong light radiation when they undergo a combustion reaction to create a blinding weapon with strong light radiation. It's just that compared with the individual soldier flash bomb shock bomb with a low charge, the high-light blinding bomb fired by the Ruger artillery has dozens or hundreds of times more charge. Therefore, the strong light it emits is more intense. Directly illuminated by this strong light, Anya, who was still concentrating on controlling the magic power of the ice that was on the verge of collapse, immediately fell into a state of blindness. Anyone whose eyes are suddenly flashed by a bright light and lose vision will panic. The magic power, which was on the verge of collapse, immediately escaped her control. No, it's about to explode. Brother Lou, run. Tia was shocked. The situation on Lugger's side was not good. Although he closed his eyes early and escaped the strong radiation equivalent to dozens of suns, when aluminum and magnesium burn, in addition to emitting strong light, there will also be high temperatures. The so-called thermite bomb relies on this violent combustion to instantly melt strong iron door locks. It is often used by gangsters in various bank vaults in Los Santos. Even the iron locks can be melted. Imagine Lugger's hand holding this thing. Fortunately, he is not stupid either. Although I was holding the warhead with my bare hands, I still knew how to take out a pair of pliers to clamp it. But even so, even through the energy material armor, his hands were still burned by the high temperature and almost lost feeling. Hearing Taya's warning, he hesitated for a moment, wondering if it would be better to just retreat and heal. But turning around to look at Anya, who was looking sad and disappointed and ready to die, and looking at Austin, who was not blinded by the bright light because he was too far away and was still staring here hoping that Anya would die quickly, Lugger gritted his teeth. Still, he rushed towards Anya. Although he cannot use various automatic devices because he cannot use electronic chips in his armor, he has telekinesis and can trigger some special small objects by himself. Take, for example, the rocket booster nozzles on the leg armor. 4 rocket boosters ignited at the same time under his telekinesis, instantly increasing his forward speed several times. He rushed towards Anya like a rocket. Finally, Before the icy magic completely exploded out of control, he finally hugged the witch and pushed her away from the guillotine. As soon as he left, the icy magic exploded out of control, first shrinking to a point, and then suddenly bursting out to the surroundings. In just a moment, the entire wooden guillotine, even the black smoke and some burning flames that had not yet completely dissipated, were frozen in the thick ice crystals. Crack, crack, crack. It was as if at that moment, the whole place was sealed into a landscape crystal. "Brother Lou, how are you? Are you okay?" Seeing Ruger rushing down the wooden platform, Tia hurried over to support him who was about to fall. Just seeing Anya fainted in his arms, she couldn't help but feel a little jealous. "Why do you have to save her? She is deceived and used by a scumbag and refuses to repent. She wants to drag you to death with her. Why bother with her? Let her die by herself." Ruger did not refute, but just smiled at her. "I'm fine. Besides, the scumbag over there wants her to die, so we save her to make things worse for him." "Humph, you like her beauty, right?" Tia still refused. "No way, she is not as pretty as our Tia," Ruger said casually. "What, Brother Lou? I didn't expect you to be so slick." Tia raised her little fist and knocked on his shoulder pretending to be angry, but the force was no different from tickling. Obviously, although she refused, someone still felt happy when hearing these words. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 146. His. Lugger put on a full show here, and immediately pretended to be in pain when the wound was touched, causing Tia to check the wound hurriedly again. While the fight was going on, the paladins and a group of people over there also came over. But when they were about to reach the two of them, Minerva, who was standing aside, blocked them with a long-handled sword. "Don't come any closer. Keep your distance. I just came here to see my teammates," the paladin captain said pretentiously. "Don't worry about this, we will take care of her." Tia, who was just laughing and joking with Lugger, immediately darkened her face, turned to look at Austin and said, "The result of this." Tia was about to say we won when another person from the paladin side suddenly stood up and said. The two of them left the ring at the same time, which means they both abstained. This round is a draw. Are you blind? After hearing such shameless words, not to mention Tia, even Minerva couldn't help but angrily yelled. Obviously we defeated her first, and we escaped with her because we were afraid that her magic power would backfire on her. It's obvious that we won, why should we call it a tie? Upon hearing this, the paladins immediately retorted, rules are rules. In the situation just now, I would also like to say that our people almost killed you. Minerva wanted to argue, but Tia held out her hand to stop her. Bomb Girl looked at Austin with burning eyes. Master Paladin, don't take advantage of your subordinates. What do you say to yourself? Austin looked at Tia and then at Lugger, and seemed to look at the unconscious Anya with his peripheral vision, his face looking uncertain. Finally, when he opened his mouth to say something, Luge slowly stood up. Consider it a draw, let's continue. Whoever wants to go up to you, on our side, I'm going to fight. I'm so angry that I have nowhere to vent my anger. I just need someone to come out and beat me as a sandbag. What he said was extremely arrogant and domineering. If he had heard him say this before two battles, not to mention everyone on the paladin side, even the spectators would have ridiculed him for not overestimating his abilities. But now, when he said these words, everyone on the paladin side would only look away and subconsciously step back. Just to stay away from this evil god. They may or may not admit it, but the reality is that this man indeed defeated two powerful Nephilims in succession. Moreover, one of the two people was dead and the other was unconscious. With this fighting power, he said today that he would fight everyone on the paladin side once, and they didn't dare to believe it. And after hearing what he said, even the person who said it was a draw could not help but shrink his neck and hide in the crowd, never daring to come forward again. Austin, who was standing at the front of the team, twitched at the corners of his eyes when he heard this. He knew very well that there were experts on his side who were better than Anya or Daniel, but the gap between them was not that big. It's probably like a difference of 7 wins and 3 losses in 10 games. Obviously, this loser who jumped out of nowhere in front of him, against Daniel or Anya, saying he had 9 wins and 1 draw in 10 games was an underestimation of him. The only ones who really have a chance to win are himself and his Amazon bodyguard Natasha. But in the current situation, even if he plays, it will do more harm than good. If the ship capsizes in the gutter, not to mention being directly killed by the opponent, even if the victory is not clean and beautiful, it will cause a major blow to one's own side. As for Natasha, she is superb as a bodyguard or assassin, but when she goes into the ring to compete one-on-one with others, it can only be considered second-rate at best. In this case, it is better to stop the loss in time. After thinking about this, he turned to look at Lugger, who looked eager to try, and forced a smile. This time, even if you win, according to the law, we will no longer pursue your crime of secretly sneaking into Rogtown. Also acknowledge your accusation that Daniel and Anya secretly framed other sanctuary humans. Now that Daniel is dead, another sinner, Anya, has been handed over to your hands. In that case, this matter will be settled. Austin became more and more fluent as he spoke, and finally even regained his previous composure, as if the matter in front of him had nothing to do with him, but was just a random case that he tried as a judge. What? That's it? Before Tia said anything, the paladins started muttering. However, when someone secretly said no, you go ahead, the voice of dissatisfaction with the result quickly became quiet and quickly disappeared without a trace. That's it for now. I still have to deal with the commotion here with my people, so I won't accompany you. After that, Austin turned around and wanted to leave. Seeing that he didn't even look at Anya, Tia seemed to be leaving Anya directly to them to do whatever they wanted, so she couldn't help but said angrily, "Do you still have a heart? Anya is working so hard, isn't it just for you? Just give up on her if you say you give up." After hearing this, Austin paused for a moment and said without looking back, "I never asked her like that, it was all her own choice," and then strode out of here. What? Hey, do you still have a conscience? And you losers, think about it, if he treats Anya like this today, he will treat you the same way in the future. Tia was even more angry. The atmosphere was quite awkward. However, not long after, a man suddenly stood up from the crowd of paladins and shouted, "For Lord Austin, for glory, for sacred justice, we are willing to give everything." Inspired by his words, the others were instantly excited. "Yes, we are willing to give everything for sacred justice." This group of people shouted together, and it felt like they were the winners. "Damn," he pretended again. "If you don't know, you would think they won." Minerva said indignantly. "What should we do next?" Ruger shook his head indifferently and turned to look at Tia. "I'm talking about the seeds and the human survivors." Yet Tia nodded. "Let's go back to the alchemy workshop first and help me pack up." "Are you really planning to leave Rogue Town?" Minerva asked hesitantly. "You've seen the situation here. It's not too much to say that it's in a desperate situation, right? And Lady Akara's attitude towards them is obviously letting them go. Lady Akara and her friends are experienced and knowledgeable. Maybe they have some special plans, but I don't know. But I don't plan to be trapped by these things anymore. Before, I wanted to maintain my master's alchemy workshop as much as possible, so I pretended to be nice to them. Now, Since we have another possible place to stay, I can just move the alchemy workshop to the second shelter. It's a good opportunity to organize those ordinary people to build their own homes. Why not? Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 147. 5 days after the Guillotine War. The ruins of the former second shelter. The ordinary human pioneers who came here with Tia are busy sorting out the few remaining supplies here. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow dot. This place used to be a supermarket in the Lost World, and there are some shops such as hardware stores around it. In the impact of the fragments of the Dark World, this place was fortunately preserved in its entirety. After the impact of the fragments, it seems that because it is too far away from the sewer, the ghosts that expanded their territory underground did not extend their tentacles here. So, here formed a rare natural shelter with neither ghosts nor monsters attacking. There is even enough food and a lot of tools inside. Although most ordinary humans have forgotten their history, the relevant records are not a secret to the Nephilim. That is, a considerable number of the humans in Rogue Town are descendants of the survivors of this second shelter and other shelters that are very similar to it. There are not just one or two such lucky lost relics. Even if we ignore the proportion and only talk about the absolute number, it is still a considerable number. Like what? It is like after a catastrophic earthquake, in the epicenter city, the main structure is still intact and has not collapsed completely. There will naturally be more survivors in such buildings. However, with the battle between humans and monsters in the future, most of the relics in bad locations disappeared in the war. And now this second shelter is the last lucky shelter recorded in Rogue Town. Theoretically, there should be other lucky shelters that have not been discovered. So even if a Ruger of unknown origin suddenly appears, those Nephilim will only regard him as a lucky person who has just escaped from such relics. As for the time gap and plane crossing, these elements can only be thought of by people of Akara's level. After all, they are too far away from ordinary Nephilim. This second shelter was recently captured by the Paladin cult using tricks to attract monsters. This place, which originally had no magic power, was also contaminated with a lot of hellish magic. If you want to make this place a place that is not occupied by monsters again, you have to find a way to remove all the magic attracting potions that Anya secretly placed before. Then find a way to clean up the remaining fine magic. This kind of work originally required Tia, an alchemist, to check every inch of the land. But now, a certain culprit has also come here with them, so it is natural that the person who tied the bell must be the one to untie it. I protest, you are abusing prisoners of war. I am a high-level lightning and ice dual cultivation wizard, why do you let me do what these mud-legged laborers do? A certain culprit howled in dissatisfaction. Shut up, work hard, or you will have no food tonight. The supervisor Minerva retorted fiercely. After all, you buried all these yourself. You didn't find it troublesome when you buried them yourself, but now you find it troublesome when you clean them up. That's different. That's for. The witch was halfway through her sentence, and she couldn't say the rest for Lord Austin. After walking around the edge of death, although her nature is hard to change and she is still arrogant and mean in her bones, she has not completely changed. At least, her obsession with someone is not as strong as before. So, you have to pay for the sins you have committed yourself. Hurry up, if you can't finish it before the sun sets, you won't have time to eat when the demon tide comes tonight. By then, you can only pick up the broken arms and limbs of a hard-haired mouse on the battlefield, suck some blood and eat some raw meat to fill your stomach. You haven't eaten raw mouse meat, have you, Master Mage? That thing is not just unpalatable, it's fishy, smelly, and hard. I guarantee you'll never forget the taste once you eat it. Minerva's vivid description was so contagious that the witch over there couldn't help but retching just by listening to it. Fortunately, After being scared like this, she worked harder. Not far from the digging duo, Ruger was leading those ordinary humans to set up machine gun array fire points at the entrance and exit of the shelter. He didn't want to give these humans who hadn't been trained much, such as artillery, for the time being, but he had as many light weapons as he wanted below the general machine gun. Weapons of this level basically pose no threat to Tia and Minerva. Don't be hostile to others, but be on guard against them. Although he was considered a lost human by the Nephilim, it didn't mean that he really regarded these ordinary humans as his compatriots. Among them, he trusted those who had fought hard in this shelter and had to flee back to Rogue Town under the siege of monsters. These people naturally became the first leaders of this new shelter. But he was not so relieved about the other spectators of the guillotine battle. Some of these people may have been awakened by the reality thrown in their faces, and suddenly realized that they wanted to make a name for themselves. But it is not ruled out that some people are undercover sent by people with ulterior motives. Luger didn't want these people to easily master overly powerful weapons. His standard is that weapons that use full-caliber rifle bullets and ammunition with lower muzzle energy can be provided to the so-called human resistance army. Weapons with higher kinetic energy will not be provided for the time being. In other words, not only are artillery weapons not allowed, but heavy machine guns will not be released. Moreover, even if he releases them, he does not intend to let everyone get modern assault rifles. What AK-47s for everyone, a stock from C/U0026C General, that is absolutely impossible. The most he distributed were still light weapons from the World War II era. For example, the MP-40 submachine gun, and the Mauser Kar 98K rifle. Well, as I said before, if something is easily obtained, it will not be cherished by people. These old guns are no problem against low-level monsters, and with the firepower array arranged by Ruger himself, it is enough to defend the shelter. Isn't there a saying that in the decades after the end of World War II, heavy weapons on land, sea, and air have developed rapidly, but light weapons on land have progressed at a snail's pace? What I mean is that from the demand side, the kinetic energy, velocity, trajectory and even damage effect of the bullets fired by these guns have not changed much. But in fact, that is because the better demand on the demand side has given way to heavy weapons. To accurately hit a human-shaped target a few kilometers away, why bother to build a super sniper rifle that is difficult for ordinary soldiers to control? Wouldn't it be better to let the artillery do it? So in fact, compared with the light weapons of World War II, the demand side of modern light weapons has not changed much, but the supply side is quite different. The so-called supply side refers to the ability of people who use guns to control guns. For example, gun controllability, ergonomics, and even ammunition logistics supply and carrying methods. Let the human resistance army use these weapons first to feel the smoke and shock of the old weapons of World War II, relatively backward gunpowder formula and ergonomics. Then slowly replace them with modern guns with less smell, better feel, and smaller supply weight. You can also harvest more favorability and loyalty, so why not do it? Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 148. While Ruger was leading the construction, Tia was not idle either. In order for this shelter to survive for a long time, in addition to the problem of force, the more important problem is water and food. The problem of drinking water was quickly solved with the help of the old chatterbox who could pass through the wall. It found an underground river along the original tap water supply system of this relic. Although this underground river may have been an above-ground river in the world of the lost. This is good news, but it also brings back bad news. The drainage facilities here, after many twists and turns, will still connect to the ghost underground city. It is the sewer maze system deep in the evil cave. Fortunately, not only one section of the pipeline collapsed in the middle, which blocked this passage. So the ghosts in the underground city have not arrived here yet. However, it is not ruled out that they will slowly come to the door when they continue to dig underground water pipes. This is a problem, but fortunately, it is not a big problem that needs to be solved urgently. Keep paying attention and it will not be too late to find a way to deal with it later. Moreover, even if the ghost finds him one day, Ruger can just bring out the modified Ferdinand and put it at the entrance of the passage. That's really a one Ferdinand barrier, and all the ghosts can't get through. Unless the ghost sends out a Master of the Zodiac Commander level, anyone who comes will give Ruger points. So Tia didn't worry about it now. What she is doing is to solve another key problem: food. After decades of loss, the food in the relic supermarket has long been consumed. Maybe there are still some scattered ones, but even if they are not afraid of expiration, their number can never support the daily consumption of these 20 or 30 people. Tia's solution is naturally only one, that is, fungus blanket seeds. She gave more than half of the seeds she brought back from the ghost dungeon to Rogue Town. In exchange, she exchanged a Kara for permission to take away humans who are willing to leave. And the remaining half of the fungus blanket seeds were brought back to the second shelter by her. After demarcating an area near the water source, she began to sow these seeds. Similar to the way Gui Mei sowed seeds, she actually needed to use the corpses of monsters to fertilize these seeds and promote their rapid development. But if she did that, these fungal blankets would inevitably be infected by the magic energy of monsters. In this way, the fungal meat produced at the beginning would still be harmless. However, as mentioned before, when these fungal blankets multiply to a certain extent, they will absorb minerals in the soil, etc., making their fungal meat poisonous. Although the magic energy of monsters will not directly poison them, it will shorten the time for them to enter the maturity and poisoning period. The batch of seeds that Tia left in Rogue Town will inevitably encounter this problem. But the situation is different in this second shelter, because Tia is no longer fighting alone. She also has a Doraemon-like helper. Ruger. Ruger's vending machine can provide real non-toxic and harmless ordinary meat. For example, those steaks that are only 1 or 2 rare in the food vending machine can be taken out for Tia as nutrients for developing seeds. Of course, when using these things, Tia still has to avoid other people. These are the secrets between her and Ruger. Even Minerva only knows some of them because Ruger did not deliberately avoid them, but what she knows is not detailed or complete. But at this time, Tia not only knows the true source of Ruger's food, but also knows his identity as a time traveler. Although the total time is not much, the special things they encountered after meeting each other are comparable to what ordinary people or even doctors encounter in a year. In particular, with the previous guillotine battle as an opportunity, the two finally confided in each other and formally established a relationship. In this case, Ruger did not want to hide anything from her about his origins, so he found an opportunity to tell Tia the truth. Of course, another thing happened, which also left Ruger with not much choice except telling her the truth. Probably on the night after the guillotine battle, after settling down in the alchemy workshop, Ruger and Tia went to meet a Kara who was waiting for her in the central area. That is the 80-year-old, the real leader of the former rogue camp in Rogue Town, and the senior nun of the Blind Sisters. Ruger thought that the old woman just wanted to meet Tia, ask her what she had experienced during this period, and explain to her about letting the Paladin Order go. But what he never expected was that as soon as they met, the old woman immediately called out his name, Ruger. Still in standard Chinese. She even casually said some private information about Ruger, such as date of birth, favorite food color, etc. If this information did not sound true and false to Ruger, he almost thought that this nun who believed in the blind eye really mastered high-end technology such as mind reading. But even so, Ruger's shock did not disappear. Because even the incorrect part of the information was actually information he deliberately made up to cover up his identity. This seems to be a bit too lofty. He was just an ordinary person, not a spy. What information does he need to cover up his identity? In fact, It is personal information fabricated in the Internet age to protect personal privacy. For example, date of birth. In his era, any website required registration of membership, and registration of members required date of birth. However, the security of these websites is too poor. Not to mention that they may pack up and leave at any time. Even those large websites often have the problem of user data being stolen. In this case, Ruger made up several disguised identity templates for himself and used them as registration identities for various websites. Many people use this trick, especially IT practitioners whose work involves big data or information extraction. So although it sounds strange, it is actually a relatively common operation. But what is unusual is that someone once lied to another person about this fabricated information out of a half-cautious and half-joking mentality. Although he had recognized that person in his heart as the relationship between the two deepened, he still could not find a chance to change back some details. As a result, he was remembered for a lifetime. Even, he related to Akira. Yes, that person was his ex-girlfriend, Chirurgia, who had just broken up in his own world. When Ruger first heard Akira say the name Chirurgia, he was completely stunned. When Akira said that Chirurgia was actually Anya's mother's mother, he was almost shocked to the point of exploding. What happened? Why did his world and this alternate dimension suddenly begin to converge and merge? According to Akira, in the once destroyed world of the Lost, there was also a Chinese woman named Chirurgia who survived in that lucky shelter. Not only did she survive, she also came to the rogue camp to help the rogues who had just entered this world, especially Akira, to resist the cruelty of the end of the world. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Ai-chi-ji. Chapter 149. But because she gave birth to a daughter during the catastrophe, Chirurgia's health has always been poor, and she died of illness more than 40 years ago. The daughter she left behind was naturally adopted and raised by Akira. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. However, she got married and had children, and gave birth to Anya. Before Chirurgia died, she not only left a lot of valuable knowledge of the lost Turog town, but also left some of her own private secrets to her friend Akira. For example, the information of her daughter's biological father, Ruger, and how she separated from him and came to Europe. Her story is not complicated, even simple and bloody, like a 20th century romance novel. She broke up with her ex because of another man, and with the help of that man, she successfully got the opportunity to study abroad in Europe by the company and went abroad. However, not long after she went abroad, the strange and charming world-destroying disaster suddenly broke out, and she was lucky in misfortune and was trapped in that kind of shelter. After finally surviving, she found out that she was pregnant. As for the man in the same company, she never mentioned him again. Ruger didn't want to believe it until Akira took out an old photo, which was a scene of him and Chirurgia going to a tourist resort. Even if he didn't believe it, he had to admit the fact that there was also a pair of Ruger and Chirurgia in the world of the lost. But the amount of information was too much, and even he was confused. There was no way. Anyone who suddenly found out that a little girl who looked like his ex-girlfriend was actually his granddaughter would have a headache and be speechless. But thinking about it carefully, it seems that there is another explanation for this matter. For example, maybe this destroyed world of the lost is just a parallel plane of Ruger's original world. So it is normal for two parallel worlds to have a pair of lovers with the same name, appearance, and experience. Therefore, Anya's real grandfather is actually Ruger from the Lost World, not Ruger from another dimension. Even though the DNA of the two Rugers is likely to be exactly the same. But this is just his idea. Akira has another different explanation for the phenomenon that he should be in his 70s but now looks only in his 20s, time travel. From Akira's perspective, she is more inclined to believe that Ruger was imprisoned by some force during the catastrophe of the world fragment impact. Or, trapped in a time gap. 50 years have passed in the outside world, while Ruger in the time gap has only experienced a moment. Now, he was released from the time gap for unknown reasons, and what happened in front of him happened. Ruger was somewhat dismissive of her idea itself. But think about it carefully, the time gap she mentioned does not necessarily have to be some high-end physical phenomenon. It can also be magic, or even some kind of technological means. Following this line of thought, it seems that the main line of the latest 4 generations of the Fallout series is a similar process. The protagonist's family was placed in a hibernation capsule and should wake up in the next 200 years, but the child was snatched away 60 years in advance. In the end, only one parent woke up from the hibernation capsule 60 years after the child was snatched away and went to find his child, but the child had become an old man. So, if the time gap mentioned by Akira is replaced with a hibernation capsule of a certain force, her hypothesis still holds true. Even Ruger himself cannot rule out a possibility, that is, Ruger in the Lost Plane may have really experienced something similar. Of course, if we only look at the probability that Ruger died in the catastrophe 50 years ago is greater. Secondly, he died in the apocalyptic environment afterwards. To say that it cannot be ruled out that he was really imprisoned in the time gap actually feels agnostic. The so-called inability to rule out a possibility is simply because it is impossible to prove the fact or disprove this idea. But anyway, compared to directly revealing that he relied on the system to travel to this plane, Ruger could only pinch his nose and admit Akira's version in the end. He just said that he didn't remember what happened in between, and he arrived in this world in the blink of an eye. In fact, if the existence of the system is eliminated, his experience is really that simple. He was still in his own home 1 second ago, and was thrown into this world the next second. Well, we have to exclude his experience of going to the abandoned city of the zombie tide. If he thinks so, he even doubts for a moment whether his so-called time travel was really sent to 50 years later by the system. After all, the system has not yet given him the ability to return to his original world. For things like time travel, one-way time travel can easily become time travel. What about time travel back to ancient times, time travel to the future? Some time travel to the future is actually back to the forgotten ancient civilization, or other civilized planets before the emergence of human beings on Earth. Some time travel to the fictional ancient times is actually the human civilization that has revived after the complete destruction of human civilization after the Third World War. However, double time travel, back and forth travel, and repeated travel are mostly parallel plane theories. Because if back and forth travel is still time travel, it is too easy to trigger the grandfather paradox and kill yourself. Ruger didn't even play it on purpose, but he suddenly became someone else's grandfather. If he really went back to the past and affected his grandfather's life by accident, I don't know what kind of mess it would be. In short, when he left Akira, he had to take his granddaughter, the witch Anya, who was personally recognized by Akira. There were 3 people who learned about this directly from Akira: Ruger, Anya, and Tia. Ruger was already the biggest winner in this matter. He got a grandson for nothing, but he still looked very shocked. Imagine Anya, who suddenly had an extra grandfather, grandpa. The enemy I always hated, a slick and annoying human, suddenly became my long-lost grandpa. What kind of experience is this? Please find the psychological shadow area of the person involved. Urgent, waiting online. After being deliberately let out by the person she loved to die, Anya suffered another round of the same level, which can be said to be a nuclear bomb-level psychological blow. She was able to hold on without a mental breakdown, more or less thanks to the miserable childhood her adoptive mother gave her. The more miserable she experienced since childhood, the more numb her spirit was, and the stronger her ability to withstand blows was. But even so, on the way back to the alchemy workshop from the Akara mayor's mansion, Anya didn't give Ruger any good face. She even avoided someone 8 feet away, for fear of being assimilated by the aura of someone and becoming a direct blood relative. The two parties had this attitude: would Tia, the only bystander, be better? Haha, how is it possible? The boyfriend who had just established a relationship with her suddenly had an ex-girlfriend. He had that kind of relationship with the ex-girlfriend and gave birth to a daughter. The most hateful thing is that Anya, who had been making trouble for him all the time since childhood, turned out to be his granddaughter? Ask for the psychological shadow area, waiting online. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-chi-ji. Chapter 150. For Lugger, Anya's psychological shadow can be as large as she likes, as long as she can't die. Google search reading. But it's best not to have Tia's psychological shadow at all. He had no choice but to prove his innocence, so he could only find an opportunity to confess his identity as a time traveler to Tia, and even took her for a tour in the logistics space. Only in this way did Tia reluctantly believe that he was really not Anya's biological grandfather. But, just because you are not Anya's grandfather in this world, doesn't it mean that there isn't another Anya in your world, right? Tia cleverly caught Hwa's point, blind spot. This. Lugger had never thought of this before, and was confused when Tia asked him directly. Although, he soon thought that Chirurgia in this world would give birth to a daughter, probably because the end of the world was coming and she could not take other measures. If everything was working properly, it would be almost impossible for her to give birth to this daughter given her personality. Not to mention that because he has this daughter, he will go back to find Lu Ji to get back together. But these are all his speculations, and he has no evidence. In the end, he had no choice but to use all the coaxing skills he had learned throughout his life and used them all on Tia. However, some adult stories finally happened between the two young men who were both a little too emotional. Fortunately, a certain pet was left outside by Tia and did not follow him, and the indescribable movements of the two were not captured as video material. Well, don't get me wrong, it's a UFC-level mixed martial arts fight. The kind that hits the flesh with fists. Of course, a certain person was no match for an assassin who had learned physical skills since childhood. He was beaten so casually that he lost his armor, which was horrific. Fortunately, after this battle, Tia became angry. Looking at Luja's miserable appearance, she bandaged him and gave him medicine. The mood finally calmed down. After that, Tia asked him a key question, and he finally understood the real reason why Bomb Girl suddenly exploded. If you go back to your own world, will you renew your relationship with that person and Anya's grandmother? Don't worry, it won't be. Lugger is not stupid. He will never give a wrong answer to a question like this that has only one standard answer. If I can go back, I will definitely take you back with me. Let you meet my parents, our parents. He continued to express his loyalty. When the time comes, we will come here for adventure when we have free time, and rest at home when we are tired. There are countless delicious things at our house. Even if we eat 10 kinds of food every day, it will be enough for us to live for several years. Yes, I don't know whether it was Lugger's loyalty or the delicious food in his mouth that captured Tia's heart. She finally leaned into someone's arms gently and sweetly. But, she asked again shortly after, what if you can't come back if you go back? Wherever you are, I will be there, Lugger immediately said decisively. No, I don't want it. Tia gave him a sweet kiss first, then put her head back on his chest. Brother Lu still has his parents and family. I don't want you to be separated from them forever because of me. Upon hearing this, Luj hugged the girl in his arms tighter, as if he wanted the two to truly become one. Don't worry, this kind of thing won't happen. Lugger also knew that saying this at this time would be a serious flag suspicion, but when he said this, it was impossible for him not to take care of Taya's emotions. On the other side, he was also bombarding the system with words in his mind. Can he go home? Can he come back after he goes home? He had asked the system this question a long time ago, but the system never answered directly. Neither affirmation nor denial. In the past, he could tolerate the system playing dumb, but now, everything is different. As if aware of his determination, the system did not ignore him this time, and finally gave him a string of prompts. After the host accumulates 10,000 points, the right to purchase time travel related services will be unlocked. At that time, the host can study how to travel in time and space between this plane and the main plane. The above information is not information that the host can automatically obtain at this stage. It is notified in advance by the system after repeated strong requests from the host. It is a special service and the system must charge the host relevant information fees. 1000 points have been deducted. Come on, are you kidding me? So 1000 points are gone? Seeing this string of information, especially when he discovered that 1000 points were missing from his wallet out of thin air, Luger felt extremely uncomfortable. But he could probably guess that this was some kind of warning given to him by the system. Warn him that it is best to do less of this kind of torture of the system. If you do, you will have to pay the price. It turns out that it wasn't long before he accumulated 10,000 points. You can get 600 points by completing the food seeding task, and you can even get 2,000 points by completing the task of saving the human resistance army on the verge of destruction. If you just hunt casually during this period, it might not take a few days to collect 10,000 points. By then, as the relevant permissions are unlocked, he will naturally learn the above information. These 1000 points were only exchanged for a piece of information that he would be able to obtain automatically within a short period of time. How could he not feel heartbroken? However, after thinking about it again, he calmed down again. After all, with this information from the system, he can now be sure that he can return to the main plane as well as here. Taya's previous worries were automatically invalidated. From this point of view, it costs 1000 points to get the news in advance, which is not expensive at all. If there is a next time, Ruger will pay for it. After sharing this good news with Tia, both of them breathed a sigh of relief. Tia's focus immediately shifted from whether they would be separated to what delicious food there was in Ruger's hometown. Then, Tia's stomach growled because of Ruger's traditional cross-stock reporting the menu: braised duck, braised chicken, bacon, songhua tripe, dry meat, and sausage. Ruger did what he said, and simply bought all those things one by one. In this way, Tia, who was greatly shocked by the grandfather incident, was finally settled by Ruger. After that, the days of several people in Rogue Town were relatively peaceful. The Nephilim supremacists on the Paladin side seemed to be subject to some kind of constraints and rarely appeared around Tia's alchemy workshop. Even if they met people who went out to purchase or do things in other places, they would take the initiative to retreat. In this regard, Ruga and Tia, who had already reached some agreements with Akara, did not express anything. They simply thought that this was a matter of course. But Minerva couldn't stand it, so she simply asked her friends to find out what the Paladins were thinking. That is, since Tia took the initiative to leave Rogue Town, there should be no unnecessary trouble. The sooner this plague god is sent away, the sooner the Nephilim supremacists can come out and continue to be domineering. Of course, the last 4 words were added by Minerva herself. Their original words were, implementing divine justice. What kind of bullshit justice is it? It's just an order based on racism, which is called the caste system. This is Ruga's evaluation of this.